Welcome to Let's Talk About It. I'm Tamara,
And I'm Sheena.
and today we're going to be talking about lesbian language.
Ooh, is this a foreign language that I have yet to learn?
Totally. It's totally an Iolic Greek dialect that's used on the island of Lesbos.
You're being funny, right?
I am being funny, although that is a thing.
But is it a lesbian thing?
Well, the people of Lesbos would think so.
Oh, that's funny. Okay, because the people of Lesbos are called lesbians, right?
Yes.
And hence that whole lawsuit thing that we spoke about in one of our podcasts. Yeah, I don't think that they're going to have any chance whatsoever of reclaiming the word lesbian.
No. Sorry, ship has sailed. And
Indeed.
it's full of lesbians on a cruise.
Oh, I want to go on a lesbian cruise. Okay, but let's talk about language. What really are we talking about in terms of lesbian language?
Well, we're just talking about, is there something such as lesbian language? If there is, what is it and what does it mean?
Okay, well, is there?
Kind of, yes and no. As
Okay.
with most things. I was thinking about how with gay men in particular, or even the drag scene, there's very much like a strong language and slang that grows across it, right?
Okay.
Okay. So I was wondering if there is something similar for lesbians. And there is in a way. So apparently lesbians have a lot more slang than gay males do.
Really?
Really, apparently. Like,
Do you think it's because women are very much more language focused than males generally?
possibly, but a lot of those slang words have to do with female genitalia. So
Okay.
make of that what you want to.
No, but I absolutely believe that. Our obsession with female genitalia is legendary.
Well, I suppose if you're going to be a lesbian,
Let's
you need something
claim
to focus
it.
on. Let's start at the very beginning with the Greeks. No, not really.
The Greek is strong in you today. It's pity I'm not Greek, then that would have a whole nother meaning.
Ew.
Okay.
Okay.
What do you mean you? And okay, fine. Another conversation for another time.
Okay, so there actually are studies of gay, lesbian, queer language, and these are generally known as lavender linguistics.
Okay.
And it's been studied for quite a long time, but in the 1990s it was actually made into much more of a field by a guy called William Leap, and he studied particular gay male language.
Okay.
So we know a lot more about gay male language than lesbian language, as is most of these things that we've discovered along the way. But it's really, really interesting, even though it's like not lesbian. And then there's another study which is queer linguistics. And queer linguistics is all about taking out heteronormativity out of language.
Oh, wow. Okay. So now that would be interesting for me.
Most gay language, lesbian language is about actually trying to create an identity and trying to find other people like you through the use of language, particularly when you couldn't be out.
Okay.
So like in the very early days, or even today in countries like Russia, there's a very strong gay language there at the moment. So
Okay, so it's a way of sort of identifying and in a semi-safer context in a dangerous situation.
yeah, and
Okay.
sometimes these languages actually cross like different boundaries. So in Britain in the 19th century, a language called Polari came around. And Polari was a mix of Romanian, Yiddish, Cockney slang, and that became its own sort of language. And that was used by criminals, it was used by actors, it was used by prostitutes, gay men, and it became this sort of subculture type language.
Dude, you had to learn a whole language just to be gay. It sounds like a lot of work.
Yes, but if you're into it, you're into it. I mean, and I can totally see where you might need to have almost like a code speak so that other people don't try imprison you or something.
Sure. Okay.
So the word zhuzh,
Yeah.
that is Polari.
Oh, seriously?
Yes. So for you guys who don't know, zhuzh is something that's fancy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that diamond tiara is very zhuzh.
Yeah. And that's a very gay thing to say.
Very gay.
Well done.
Okay. Yes. But this is where it becomes very interesting. There are other languages throughout the world. So in the Philippines, there's something called sword speak, which is a mix of, I think, Tagalog and English, also used by gay people to identify with each other. In South Africa, there's a thing called Gael, and Gael actually uses Polari, Afrikaans, and English together. So that's where zhuzh comes, because zhuzh is very used in South Africa as well.
Very.
And then there's actually even one called Isiankomo, which is a Zulu and Xhosa form of gay speak.
Does this tend to be gay male?
It tends to be gay male, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because I'm like, this doesn't sound at all familiar to me. All right.
Okay. No, I'm just like setting the scene because
Okay.
there are these very gay languages, and they're actually like full-on languages.
Okay.
Okay. With their own code switching and all of that kind of a thing. There isn't something...
What's code switching?
So code switching is when you're switching between, say, like English and, say, French, or English and Afrikaans. So I can speak... So say you're speaking a language like Afrikaans, right? But there isn't a word for something which is very new. So you substitute an English word into it.
Okay.
That is code switching. So this is what happens with these languages. They become almost a pigeon. So you use a little bit of that language, a little bit of that language, and something starts to create an entirely new language.
Okay.
So that's where these come from. But there actually isn't something like this for lesbians, or at least not anything that's actually been recorded. And the reason why is actually kind of interesting.
Okay.
Well, at least one of the reasons why is quite interesting. And that's because lesbians identify first as women and not as lesbians. So for gay men, it's very important to, like, I'm a gay male. I'm not a male that is gay. It's the opposite for lesbians. So you're not looking for other women necessarily, or a community around being lesbian. You're looking for a community around being a woman, and being a lesbian is secondary to that.
That's interesting, and actually that makes a lot of sense, because I've heard a lot of women say, I just happen to be lesbian.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so got it.
Okay, so now this is where it goes further into speech. So you know how there's this sort of very stereotypical camp gay male kind of way of speaking?
Yeah.
Okay, so that is, again, a way of differentiating. So they put in feminine sort of mannerisms. So hypercorrect speech, higher pitch, all of that, so that because they want to be different.
So this is interesting, because you don't generally get lesbians who walk around trying to sound like men.
No.
But very often gay men will say something like, let us girls go do something.
Yes, they start to use she instead of him.
Right.
Yeah.
And I've always found that sort of odd, because, like, I don't identify as a guy because I'm lesbian. Does that make sense?
Yes, and it's not that the men who use those languages, that sort of language, want to be women or identify as women. They just identify with the femininity. Like, they don't, identify as macho, for example.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay.
So that is where that comes from. So with lesbians, apparently lesbians sometimes talk in a lower pitch. Than straight women, but the difference is so subtle that it's usually you can't even tell just by listening to a lesbian. There have been studies which have shown people to be able to identify a lesbian's voice versus a straight woman's voice, but those studies are a bit flawed, and there are sort of biases which come into play. So they've been told to look out for lesbians, for example, or, so it's not exactly a thorough study. And the difference between a hetero woman's voice and a lesbian's voice is so subtle, if there's any differences at all. Okay. But then there are cases where lesbians, particularly those who identify as that butch dyke kind of way, who start to take on male kind of speech patterns. They will use a lot of the shortening of words, contractions. They'll use more working class language. Okay.
Do you think, though, that is because of an environmental thing? Because often those women will work in male-dominated industries, like they'll be truckers, or they'll be mechanics, or they'll be that kind of thing where they're surrounded by those kinds of people.
Sure, but think about it. If I'm in a male-dominated industry and I want to appear to be as capable, as strong, or not intimidated by the male counterparts, it makes sense to camouflage yourself the way they do things, the way they speak, the way they dress, all of it.
Well, so you just become one of the guys.
Pretty much.
Okay.
So it's like, you become a chameleon. And again, remember, women like to feel like they're part of a community. So, it makes sense that you build this little thing around yourself so that you are part of the team, so that you're not singled out.
Okay, but that does make sense.
So when we're talking about lesbian language and lesbian speech patterns, we're looking at, what's the stereotype of a female way of talking, of the way females use language? And with a lot of time with lesbians, they try to like subvert that. So you'll start using typical male kind of speech pattern. So where as a woman is hypercorrect in the way she talks, she tries to use more correct grammar, higher pitched voice, you'll start to introduce maybe a lower pitched voice, maybe not as an educated way of speaking. Obviously, this depends on your social status and all that stuff as well, but those are some of the things that come into play.
When were these studies done, though? Were they done relatively recently or relatively a while ago? Because I suspect that may be changing.
You're looking at from like the 90s to sort of mid-2000s.
I suspect you're going to find that the younger generation now is a very different matter. I don't know. It's interesting. They're a different kind of a breed of lesbians coming up now.
Yeah, I think queer linguistics is going to become much more of a thing because I think with the younger generation, and I feel so old saying that, a lot of them use terminology like queer, and
yes.
There's also much more of androgynous kind of things going on as well, and I think they like to be more fluid as well. So I think queer linguistics is going to see a rise, and I mean you do see a rise in that speech pattern where like you don't put a gender on things. So like,
right.
Is it Latinx or Latinx in the States? So that is someone who's of Latino heritage, but it's not male or female. So it's Latin and with like an X at the end. And that's supposed to be like a gender neutral language. There we go. Saying they or them, all of that kind of a thing. So I think we're probably going to see a much bigger rise in that.
It's so interesting, isn't it?
It really is. And I mean, and then there's all of the slang that we mentioned earlier.
Okay, so let's do some slang terms now. Because you said that lesbians have a lot more slang terms than gay men.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go through some of them.
Okay, so I'm going to do some which I've never really heard of before because, we all know what a dyke is. So
Okay.
So 100-footer.
It's a lesbian you can spot at 100 feet.
Yes. It can also be any queer person, apparently. But so someone that you can spot.
But since we're talking lesbian terms, I'm going to refer to it as lesbian.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry. All right. Bisexual.
Bisexual, as in the alcoholic beverage.
Yes.
Someone who's only lesbian after they've had a couple of beers.
Or any other alcohol, yes.
Nice! That was a total guess.
Well
okay.
Okay, so cliterference.
Okay, I've actually heard this one. Cliterference is like cock blocking, but for lesbians.
Yes. I've never heard it, but I love it. Totally love it. Alright, a doppelganger.
I have no idea.
Someone who's attracted to people who look just like them. So, narcissists.
Okay.
Dicon.
A lesbian icon.
That's right.
Nice. I totally guessed.
Golden penis.
A strap-on?
No. This is much more mythical and epic.
Okay, is this a heterosexual male that can convert a lesbian into a straight woman?
Yes, because of how amazing his penis is.
Right. Lesbians can be really bitches sometimes.
Alright, okay, so then this one is Lesbian.
Lesbian. I'm guessing it's somebody who says they're a lesbian, but we're not convinced.
Pretty much. So, someone who claims to be a lesbian or bisexual, but who only actually sleeps or dates men.
I'm back to the whole sometimes lesbians are real bitches. Okay.
STEM, and not the maths type.
I have no idea. I can't even imagine.
Okay. So, it's something between a stud and a femme. So, kind of chapstick lesbian, but probably a lot more
put together.
Studdy.
Okay, got it.
Okay. A switch.
No idea.
Okay, so this is someone who can be a top or a bottom.
Oh.
Okay, so and the last one is trisexual.
I have no idea. Someone who will date 3 people at once?
Like a bicycle or tricycle.
Exactly, right.
Okay, trisexual is someone who will try anything at least once. Okay, so that's it. If you have any amazing lesbian slang terms that you think will challenge us,
blow our minds,
send them to us.
podcast@thelesbiantalkshow.com. We love hearing from you.
Mm-hmm. Or go over to our Facebook group, the Lesbian Talk Show chat group, and share it with the group.
Yes. On the group, we also do What Are You Listening to Wednesdays. We do all sorts of interesting things. So come on over, have a chat with us. We like having you there.
Mm-hmm. And we love podcasting, and we love sharing being lesbian with you, being queer with you. So if you'd like to support this podcast, please go over to our Patreon and support us there, or share with your friends.
Sharing our content is also really important.
Mm-hmm.
All the links to our Patreon, our Facebook page, everything like that is in the show notes, including a link to Tamara's fantastic biography, so you can read all about her and how delightful she is.
Okay, so thanks for listening.
Have a wonderful week. I'm Sheena.
And I'm Tamara.
Bye.
Bye.